Welcome, everybody, to the Bitch Slap interview number 48 with Dawson Church. We're very blessed to have Dawson Church. I was very blessed to have Dawson Church on the Tools for a Good Life Summit. I got to interview him. It was amazing. Dawson Church is a PhD award-winning science writer. He's got 3 best-selling books. He started or was an integral part of the Veterans Stress Project that has offered free treatment to over 20,000 veterans with PTSD. He's big on meditation. What else? He talks about the attention network, the empathy network, and the self-centeredness, the self-centeredness suppression network. Anyway, Dawson Church is amazing. Listen to this interview that was the Tools for a Good Life Summit interview. And of course, you can go register for the summit at the toolsforagoodlifesummit.com. Again, toolsforagoodlifesummit.com. And quick before we get to the interview, this could be the very last official bitch slap interview as I get ready to rebrand to Table Rush. Everything will stay the same. We will, same location for the podcast. It'll just have a new logo, new name, Table Rush, and but much of the same content. Enjoy this interview with Dawson Church. Welcome back, everybody, to the Tools for a Good Life Summit. And right now, I would like to introduce to you Dawson Church PhD. I'm so excited to have you on board. We just had an amazing moment, a big breath of joy and hope for this, for everybody. But quick, I'm going to read your bio, if that's okay.
Go for it. And I hope everyone's breathing with us.
Yes. So good. All right, fantastic. Dawson Church PhD is an award-winning science writer with 3 best-selling books to your credit. The Genie in Your Genes was the first book to demonstrate that emotions drive gene expression. You can find that book at yourgeniusgene.com. We've got Mind to Matter, showed that the brain creates much of what we think as objective reality. You can find that at mindtomatter.com. And we've got Bliss Brain, which you can find at blissbrain.com, which we'll be discussing in a minute. Very excited for that, which demonstrates that peak mental states rapidly remodel the brain for happiness. You have conducted dozens of clinical trials and founded the National Institute for Integrative Healthcare, NIIH.org, to promote groundbreaking new treatments. Its largest program, the Veterans Stress Project, has offered free treatment to over 20,000 veterans with PTSD over the last decade. Thank you so much for that. And you share how to apply these health and performance breakthroughs through EFT Universe at EFTuniverse.com, one of the largest alternative medicine sites on the web. Welcome, Dawson Church.
And having fun doing it all, Mischa.
And having fun doing it all. I love it. That is so, so good and so powerful. I just, I'm looking over here because I have another screen, but watching some of your content and just your joy and your enthusiasm and your passion for life, it is infectious. And I have a note here. We can learn this, learned happiness.
Learned happiness, absolutely. And it's like use it or lose it. And the neural circuits that we use the most, the habits and behaviors through which we send signals through our brain, those things are what grow, and circuits we don't use shrink. So absolutely, we can learn these things as we practice them. Our bodies, our brains are literally changing with every thought in our minds and consciousness.
Yes, which I think is so hopeful. If we are willing to just take a little bit of positive action, the results can be massive. before we get to that, however, I wanted to discuss. I wrote down some notes. You were asked to speak before Congress a couple of times, correct?
Yes.
And did you actually do? Go ahead, tell me.
Well, it was exciting because I've been to Washington, D.C. several times. And when I began to get reports back from therapists working with veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they said, we're working with these veterans, spending just a few sessions, 5, 10 sessions with them, and they're recovering from flashbacks, nightmares, PTSD.
Mm.
I was pretty skeptical because that's a big claim. And the
Yeah.
American Psychiatric Association had just commissioned a survey which showed that basically PTSD just gets worse over time. Maybe you can manage it with drugs. That's the best you can do. So
Yes.
I heard these accounts, then began to actually put some numbers to them and do some pilot research on the methods these therapists were using. And it was true that veterans really were recovering really quickly using these advanced psychotherapeutic methods. And
Yeah.
so we eventually got that work in front of several senators and Congress members. We then were able to advocate for that in Congress. And then I was invited to testify before the House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. And those were powerful moments to sit there in this room full of members of Congress and share about the potential of these methods, and then really see if we could get these veterans who are suffering. And that was a really profound experience. And
Mm.
what I found is that we have these tools now in our hands, in our toolboxes, and it's true that we really can shift most cases of PTSD. About 9 out of 10 is what research shows us. Most cases of anxiety and depression. And after 6, 7, 8 sessions, these veterans just leave their therapy sessions, and they're free of flashbacks and nightmares, intrusive thoughts, all of the other things that would have otherwise have bothered them the rest of their lives. So it's amazing to watch that happen.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think, well, two things. One, the palpable experience of the energy in front of when you're testifying. I guess testifying sounds aggressive, but when you're having an opportunity to speak to the, what did you call it, the joint, say it again, the Joint Commission, or what
Yeah,
did
the
you say?
Veterans Affairs Committee and the
Yeah.
Armed Services Committee.
Yes, yeah. So did you feel a palpable energy shift of awareness with these senators and things? I mean, like, I'm looking for some visceral experience there.
You know, it's a really interesting question, Mischa. And one of the things that I found interesting was that what made the most impact on the members of Congress was the stories of veterans themselves. Like, we had one Vietnam veteran, and he said he was due to have 6 sessions. After the first session, he emailed his therapist and said, after that very first session with you, I got my first full night's sleep since Vietnam 35 years earlier. And so the members of Congress would hear from veterans. Another veteran was a young veteran. He'd done 4 tours in Iraq, and he had this terrible PTSD, nightmares and flashbacks, because one of the first things he had to do when he got there, almost immediately he arrived in Iraq as a medic. One of his best friends was killed. And one of his jobs is he had to prepare the uniform of his dead friend to send back to the family in the US with all the other personal effects. And so this young man was so traumatized, remembering having to clean the blood and body fluids off the uniform. And it also smelled really bad because it had been sitting in the Iraqi sun for a few days. And he literally had to run outside the hut, take a deep breath of air, run back inside, do a little bit of cleaning, run back outside just to breathe because the smell so bad in there. So here he was, his emotions were 10 out of 10 as he recalled that event. After we worked with him, just one session, he was at a zero. He had no more emotion around it. He had only positive feelings. He said, I realize now that was an act of love. And I felt now the love that I was giving his family and him by that act of service. And so it shifted in his mind. So when you've seen, as you mentioned, over 20,000 veterans have this experience, and randomized controlled trial shows that these effects are true for most people, it just affects you profoundly. And that's what we found made the biggest impact on those senators and Congress members, was that when they heard stories by real people, it was even more impactful than the research numbers, data.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I love that. I obviously circumstance to get there, not so excited about, but the result and the service aspect of that too. So
Yeah,
for
we all
yourself,
have stuff left over from our past, Mischa. We all have stuff left over from our past, our childhood, early experiences that will otherwise stay with us. And so we see people shed these past burdens of trauma and then claim the lives they can live. It's just
mm,
powerful.
it's amazing. I was going to ask. I imagine seeing that again and again, and to be a part of that, and to be able to be a part of that and help grow that is just got to be insanely gratifying. Like,
They call it a job.
oh my gosh!
It's not hard work. It's wonderful. It also,
Thank you.
also really works for you because when you're helping people heal like that, we call it, there's a term for it, we call it borrowing benefits. And you literally, as you're working with other people, seeing them heal, it heals you as well.
It's beautiful. And then I think I I am as I was digging and looking, and I'm like, the amount of hours that you have put into this, and I say that in a good way, just in a massive way. I wrote down how many hours do you think you've put into this? I
No,
mean,
it's
in your
it's a bad way, Mischa. When I was 15 years old, when I was a teenager, I was so depressed, I was so anxious. I had all the symptoms of PTSD myself, flashbacks and intrusive thoughts and hypervigilance, and so I just kind of fled into a spiritual community when I was 15 to try and get over my own inner demons. And
mm,
I then spent I what I write about in there's a section of my book Bliss Brain that's called From 50 Years to 50 Seconds. And it took me 50 years to figure out how the brain works, how the neurochemistry of all this works, how our genes are being affected epigenetically by these positive and negative experiences, how we can use these methods for healing. And then what I've been doing for the last few years is hooking people up to EEGs. And so we literally read their brain information processing ability and
yeah,
how their brains are running information, especially when they think about trauma or think about bad events in their lives. And we found that now within 4 minutes or so, we can bring people from that intense, emotionally triggered state back down to deep peace, inner calm. And we had one lady in her 7 day retreat. By the end of the 7 days of practicing these methods, she was down to 47 seconds between sitting down, closing her eyes, entering that state, and in 47 seconds, under 50 seconds, she was having a full-blown, mystical, elevated, what we call the
mm,
awakened mind, bliss brain experience. So we now have figured out, with the aid of neuroscience, how to train people into doing this, not 50 years like me, but 50 seconds. 50 seconds or less.
you know what? Thank you for taking the pain, Dawson.
Don't do what I did.
Yeah.
Don't do an ashram and sit there for 10 years trying to control your breathing and your thoughts. It won't work.
It's so good. I don't want to give away the ghost here, and we're gonna get to this in a second, but um I took a couple notes, some other notes, and one was remodel your brain in as little as 8 weeks, but or no buts, but and then this other part, it's important to turn those temporary states into long-term enduring traits. Turn a state into a trait. And when I came across where you said that, I was like, that is awesome. And so we can let me go ahead. You can say something to that if you want, but
Yeah, and that really is the goal here of meditation, of EFT acupressure tapping, of the various other techniques I advocate in my books. And what you want to do is not have a temporary state of well-being, because it feels good to feel good and feels good to be happy. It feels good to be content and have inner peace, but it's a state and it'll pass. And then you hear some bad news, you stub your no, your leg on a piece of furniture, you have a financial reverse, and suddenly you lose your state. And
yeah,
so those states are nice, but they're just transient. What you want to do is fire those neurons repeatedly over and over and over again. And then as your neural bundles get bigger and thicker, and research shows that in just 1 hour of repeat stimulation, that the number of synaptic connections in a neural bundle can double. So you can double the number of connections in a neural bundle in an hour. So now you're turning the software of a state into the hardware of a trait. And then you are not just feeling happy, sometimes you are a happy person. You aren't just feeling creative, sometimes you are a creative person. So you've now got the trait of creativity, the trait of resilience, the trait of joy, and then no one can take that away from you because it's hardwired into your brain.
Love that. That's a vision of hope. That is so good. Thank you for that. All right, let's get to the good stuff. I'm gonna pose a scenario to you and then ask you a question. Okay. Fantastic. So, given this scenario, think of life as a three-legged stool of relationships, finances, and health. And now think of someone who is or was successful and who has had two of those legs fall out from under them. So this could be a combination of divorce, career upheaval, financial stress, kids acting out or not going the direction that the parents want. It could be physical health challenges for themselves or a loved one, maybe a death in the family and continued failed relationships. For me, it was divorce. My kids started to veer a little bit. I felt like career upheaval. And then both my parents died in rapid succession. So it really shook some foundations that I had. And, to top it off, my pull myself up from my bootstraps mentality that fix it or push my way through it was no longer working. So I needed some new tools. And by the grace of God, I was open to some new tools. So this is my question to you. Thinking of your Bliss Brain work and your book, what are the exact next steps you would offer this person so they know they are headed in the new right direction, that they will have positive momentum towards getting their life back on track?
This is going to sound really counterintuitive and odd.
Okay.
But it starts with self-acceptance and self-love and accepting yourself just the way you are and your circumstances the way they are. And research into healing shows that acceptance is where you have to start. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example to use here. There are a whole bunch of them that are crowding together in my brain
Sure.
to mention. But when you have multiple challenges like that, just breathing and remaining centered and accepting and loving yourself is the first thing. In your loss, in your confusion, in your difficulty, and it's hard to be in that state. And yet, if you're trying to get out of it, if you're trying, you said pushing my way through, and that works up to a point until it doesn't.
Yes.
So the first thing is just love and compassion, just self-love, self-compassion. The phrase we use in EFT acupressure tapping is, even though I have this problem, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And that's really reassuring to you when you hear that. When we're working, say, with a man who is 200 pounds overweight. Now, the last thing he wants to accept is being 200 pounds overweight. And yet, if we can train him to love and accept himself in that state, that unlocks all of the tension in the psyche between the part of yourself that's the inner coach, inner critic, inner CEO saying, you should lose weight, you should quit smoking, you shouldn't drink so much, you should eat healthy, you should take more vacations, you should save more money, blah, 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 blah. It's just yelling at us all the time. And that top-down coercive inner voice is just keeping the energy pattern of what we've got going on stuck and in place. And the moment you relax and say, I just accept myself the way I am. We did an MRI study, some colleagues of mine did an MRI study of obese women who are overweight. When they put them in the MRI and show them images of chocolate cake and strawberry pie and vanilla ice cream and all these things, their midbrains, their limbic system, the emotional part of the brain was totally lit up. In other words, they weren't seeing food as food or nutrients. They were seeing food as a highly emotional event. After those 5 or 6 sessions of these simple therapies, we put them back in the MRI. They were getting exposed to all those emotive images, and they had no response at all. In fact, the guy running the MRI, the neuroscientist, said to my colleague, "What have you done to these women? They just have no emotional response to food anymore." So again, now they don't have that huge emotional response, and they love and accept themselves the way they are. Then all of the energy that's trapped in that top dog underdog kind of struggle. You should fix yourself. You should improve. You should be better. And underdog saying, "Oh yes, I will, top dog. I will improve. I will quit smoking." Blah blah blah. And then underdog runs out behind the shed when top dog's back is turned and smokes a cigarette. And so all of the tension behind these weird psychological struggles is just removed when you love and accept yourself. So love and acceptance is the first step. So
Okay.
that's number one, accepting where you are and admitting it and acknowledging it just as a fact. And then you look at what you can do to shift, and then you practice it. I can't overstress the value of practice. One woman, what I try and do in my own work is I try to get people addicted. So I want to get them addicted to their own dopamine, serotonin, anandamide, oxytocin, nitric oxide, all these wonderful neurochemicals that happen in your brain spontaneously when you meditate. And when you do that, people have a habit of meditating. So if I can get people hooked one time on high serotonin, high dopamine, then they'll stay hooked and they'll keep on meditating. So I can't overstress the importance of getting yourself addicted to the right stuff, to meditation. And then day after day, you meditate. And within a month, our MRI research shows your brain patterns are already changing. Your brain, the way your brain processes information is already shifting. And then you start to turn those temporary states into traits. And that's the value of practice. It doesn't take long. In one MRI study, it took just 30 days of practice, 20 minutes a day, and people's brains were processing information totally differently.
That's amazing. Can I ask you what I want to ask you when I look at and was checking out your Bliss Brain book and such? You say you teach 7 simple steps. Is this part of that? Is this literally part of what we're talking about right here?
Yeah, that technique is called eco meditation, ECO meditation. And
Okay.
it is just a 7-step process. We do the acupressure, we do mindful breathing, we do a little bit of self hypnosis, we do heart coherence, and we do neurofeedback, all in a certain order. And there's
Okay.
7 of these things we practice. And when you do that, suddenly your brain just flips into ecstasy and you're in this elevated emotional state. No 10,000 hours, no spiritual master, no spiritual training, no spiritual belief required. You can be an atheist.
Yeah.
And
What?
it'll work. You can be Jewish, you can be Episcopalian, you can be
Yes.
anything, and it's just going to work. It's a mechanical, neurological event you're triggering in your body, and you feel great.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. All right, I was just curious. So we'll go back to the self-acceptance, what you can do to shift. So that would be like in this particular case, sounds like meditation would be a specific tool you're talking about, but it could be many different things for somebody.
Yeah, and in my earlier book, Mind to Matter, I list about 30 things you can do. There's grounding, there's time in nature,
Mm.
there's social support. The 2 I recommend, though, that are fundamental and easy. One, Mischa, is that style of meditation that puts you into those elevated emotional states and doing it first thing in the morning. That's number
Mm.
one. And that's, I think, should be universal. It just the benefits of one of my doctor friends said, if meditation were a drug, it would be medical malpractice to fail to prescribe it. So it's just the foundation. It's a frame for a good life. So
Yes.
well, you want to do that in the morning. It doesn't have to be an hour or 2 hours. Half an hour is plenty. And then if you use a guided meditation, that'll guide you into
Okay.
that elevated state. And then the second thing I recommend, as having everyone should have this in their personal growth toolkit, is EFT acupressure tapping. And that's just simply tapping on a series of 13 acupressure points. It regulates the body's energy. That's what helped those women get over their emotional
Mm.
attachment and projection to food. So you want to get over your high cortisol, you want to get over your stress, and EFT within 2 minutes, it'll just crash your cortisol, crash your adrenaline, your level of all of these stress neurotransmitters and hormones will go way, way, way down. And then all kinds of beneficial things increase, including immunity and cell repair. All kinds of good things go up when those molecules become available to your body for building healthy cells. So those are the two things I think that are great. Then layer in time in nature and layer in a spiritual practice. Layer in, there's a wonderful medieval term called lectio divina, reading inspirational material. Fill your mind with this stuff. Don't fill your mind with all the crap in the mass media. And whatever you do, don't turn on your phone and start looking at it first thing in the morning when you wake up, because you're going to get then stuck in the lateral level of everything going on in the world, which is not in your best interest. Instead, orient yourself meditation to what I call in my books non-local mind and non-local reality in meditation, and then you can deal with the world through the framing of being one with the universe. But that's the order to do it in. Hook up to the universe, then deal with the outside world. Don't open your eyes and look at your phone and get sucked into the outside world and then try and meditate, because you've blown it at that point and it's hard to get back to that good space.
It's too little, too late.
Yes.
Yes, I love meditation myself. I have had a committed practice for a while, and so I think it's so powerful. And I think oftentimes the results are are evident later, right? Or I'll notice too, just getting that nice breathing going, even with the monkey mind. It's almost like the monkey mind is irrelevant, but
It
um,
is.
yeah, just carrying that nice breath, that connection to the universe you're talking about through the day is before you look at the phone is so good. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
And you're right about the monkey mind being irrelevant, because
Yeah,
we can't still our minds. We can't quiet our minds. Our brains were meant to be highly active and highly involved with everything around us. I
yeah,
mean, I was just thinking about our distant ancestors. I was going down a path in the forest near me a couple of days ago, and there was a stick lying in the path. And I thought, my ancestors 100,000 years ago, when they see us that long brown skinny thing lying in the path, it might be a snake. So the
yes,
optimist says, "Oh no, it's a stick. It's fine." And 99 times out of 100,000 years ago, it was a stick, and nothing bad happened. The pessimist is seeing every stick and saying, "It's a snake. It's going to bite me." And so the
yes,
pessimist is the one time it is a snake. The pessimist says, "You see, it was a snake. It didn't bite me because I was so paranoid and suspicious, and now I'm safe." The optimist, unfortunately, at one time in 100, gets bitten and dies. So he gets weeded from the gene pool, and only the pessimist lives to perpetuate his genes to the next generation. Multiply this by 10,000 generations, you have you, Mischa, and me, Dawson, and we are capable of a monkey mind like you wouldn't believe, always looking around for the bad stuff in our environment. We've just been bred that way for tens of thousands of generations, and now we sit there and close our eyes and try and be happy. Isn't going to happen.
oh my gosh, that's amazing. um, okay, so then you said, what can we do to shift? You gave two. You have in your book, one of your books, which you referenced. You've got 30 great tools, but start with the some sort of meditation and
Mhm.
some EFT style of tapping, and then layer in more as time goes by. And then practice. So practice, like find some consistency. Yes.
Build those neural bundles, turn those states to traits. And that's what consistency will do. So then when one or more of the legs of your stool is gone, you're still totally serene, have total inner peace, and you have something that outside tragedy can't take away. You've now built the neural wiring of resilience in your brain, and that's just who you are. So when the pandemic strikes, when the economic crash happens, when you get divorced, when your kids are acting out, you are this highly resilient person. The research that I cover in both Bliss Brain and Mind to Matter shows that not only are you that person during meditation, research by a wonderful neuroscientist called Teresa Amabile at Harvard shows you reach that state mentally for that 30 minutes or so in the morning meditation flow states. They then perpetuate themselves for 48 hours of increased productivity, creativity, and problem solving ability. And in one US government study, they showed that people in those states have 5 times the ability to solve complex problems. So now, even if you have had 2 of the 3 uh, supports legs knocked out from under your stool,
Yeah.
you have 5 times the ability to solve complex problems. You're going to put your stool back together again far quicker than somebody who doesn't have those. And in fact, there's this whole field I talk about in Bliss Brain called post traumatic growth. Not only do you wind up okay, you wind up better. You actually use disaster as a springboard for personal transformation. So that's the potential
I
of that
love that.
practice.
Yeah, fantastic. Um, I love that. So many cool thoughts just were were going through my brain as you were talking about that, and now they've all escaped me, but they will come back to me in a second, I'm sure. So, after practice, was there anything else, or were you? I don't mean to cut you off with the sort of the
Yeah.
steps.
So self love, practice at least meditation, and learn tapping, because tapping takes you all of 2 minutes to learn,
Yeah,
takes you all of 30 seconds to do, and then you quickly are going to regulate your emotions. And I cover in Bliss Brain, there are 4 circuits in the brain that start to change. Now, this is the absolute miracle of neuroplasticity. 20 years ago, we had no idea the brain was remodeling itself that way. But I have case studies in Bliss Brain showing that if you practice in this way, the emotion regulation network in your brain, the little hub that governs emotional regulation in your brain, grows by, get this, 10% a month.
mm,
So in 3 months, that part of the brain can be 30% larger. So now you can regulate your irritation, your annoyance, your resentment, your negative emotion, and that opens the door to a much happier life.
mm,
So that's why in Bliss Brain I say there are 4 networks to develop, but develop emotion regulation first. The next network is the one that controls the self. And so we have these elaborate stories about who we are. I was born such and such a time. This is my biography. This is what my job is like, my life is like, my money is like. That's all the self. And unfortunately, that is the part of the brain that draws us into suffering. And it's called the default mode network. Our brain defaults to that suffering network automatically when we aren't engaged in a task. And so we need to dial that part of the brain down. Tibetan monks with 10,000 hours of meditation practice, they can dial down the default mode network. Literally, they close their eyes and in a second, they've shut it down. You and I, maybe 5 minutes,
right.
if we practice. So you want to shut down the self-absorbed chatter
A
about your
good day.
life that we're all doing, the monkey mind, and
Yes.
the self-critical part of the brain especially. So that's the next thing you want to develop. You want to develop compassion and feel compassion for other people, not just be thinking about yourself, but loving other people, loving everything the way it is, I actually guide you to loving every atom in the universe. So we
Mm,
develop these networks, the empathy network, and then the attention network. We learn to, it's part of the brain called the orbitofrontal prefrontal cortex. We develop that part of the brain so it grows, becomes better at firing, and then we can pay attention to what's important and we can screen out irrelevant information. Our work productivity goes through the roof. We're far more productive at
mm.
work. We're far better at solving problems. Our creativity at least doubles with these methods in a very short order. So the benefits to your regular life are immense.
Mm, that's amazing. And one of the thoughts that I had, which I love, and you're just verifying with data, with research, is this idea that I don't have time. I don't have time, right? Like and if we take the time, it will make us that much more efficient, that much more productivity or more productive, right? And so And it sounds like that, and I would verify this for myself, but maybe you can validate it for me. Time taken for the meditation, the simple practices, the rewards far, the productivity rewards, happiness rewards, time rewards, efficiency rewards far outweigh the limited amount of time we need to put in to achieve
Yeah,
those results.
when people say I don't have time to meditate, my retort is you don't have time not to meditate. In
Yes.
one study done by a huge consulting firm called McKinsey, they found that executives who are already high performers and are entering these flow states we find in meditation, their productivity goes up fivefold. So you
Ooh,
get done now in one day what used to take you five. Now, those are peak performers, and we're now measuring this in ordinary people. We're measuring
yeah.
how much productivity goes up. But even if it goes up 20%, that's like an extra day a week you have
Yeah.
available to you, and you won't be using that week to do email and that extra day of the week to work. You'll be using it to go play, be creative, and have fun. So it changes your whole life game plan to have
I
that
love it.
huge increase in productivity.
Perfect. Before I want to do one thing, if you would, for me, really quick. You were talking about in the Bliss Brain book, there's the four neural networks that you're affecting change in, correct?
Yes,
I think is what you said. And so the first one was there, I
emotion
know,
regulation.
was say it again,
Emotion regulation.
emotion regulation. And so that would be, for example, the meditation, the stuff like
Mhm.
that, right? And then the
Yes.
second one was
There's the attention network,
intent. So
the empathy
what would be,
network,
oh, go ahead.
and the attention network, empathy network, and the self-centeredness suppression network. There's parts of the brain that take that self-absorbed mental chatter and switch off that function.
Perfect. Okay. For the second one, could you give a simple tip or tool to help with that, to give someone a vision? So the I can't read my own writing.
Yeah, so for the attention network, for
Yes.
example, that's why a guided meditation is so useful. I
Okay.
have dozens of guided meditations free on the web, both at ecomeditation.com and also Insight Timer has them. A bunch of
Okay.
websites have my meditations for free.
Perfect.
Blissbrain.com has them. Mind to Matter has unique ones for manifestation. And so these guided meditations give your attention network a voice, some music to focus on. That's good for you for maybe 6 months, maybe 2 or 3 years. At that point, you want to graduate from that and you'll be doing meditations yourself. You'll be able to focus your attention without the words. But for novices, it's really hard to do. You need something to focus on, like that voice and that music. So
I
that's the
love it.
second network you
Fantastic. And
want.
why not take advantage of those tools, especially since a ton of them are out there for free,
Yep.
right? Okay, so the empathy network, tell me a tip trick tool for that? Is that more meditation, or is
Yeah.
that basically, in what I'm hearing you say, is that meditation is going to fire all four of those?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
empathy, like the guided meditations, we have you focus on a source of unconditional love, a person, a being with whom you feel that sort of connection. And when you do that, that activates a part of the brain called the insula, which is to do with pro-social emotions. So, empathy, altruism, love, gratitude, all of those things are activated, and all of those are part of what the insula runs. And so when you activate the insula, all of these pro-social emotions kick in, and then you can feel this immense compassion. Your heart rate slows down, then your heart rhythm becomes very regular. All kinds of good things happen in your body. So you deliberately activate the insula during the compassion part of eco meditation.
Fantastic. Thank you. And then the self-centeredness.
Yeah. And so in chapter 1 and chapter 7, beginning and end of my book, Mind to Matter, I talk about local reality and non-local mind. And we all have to navigate local reality. I have to keep my, car tuned up, and I have to keep my mortgage and rent paid, and I have to take care of my children, and I have a whole local reality I have to attend to. And then what meditation allows you to do is step into non-local reality. And so when I sit there in the morning and meditate, I find myself being drawn up into this whole other world of just pure being. And then you're merging with non-local love, non-local information fields. And when you then end meditation and move back into your work world, you're drawing down all of this information into your local reality. That's what makes you so productive. Like Albert Einstein said, that that's the way all great scientific discoveries are made, by people in altered states of consciousness where they're in tune with these global reality fields. And like he'd been trying to figure out the theory of relativity for a long time. And then one night he fell asleep. He was really depressed and frustrated at the time. He just was like beating his head against a wall. And he just saw the whole theory of relativity in a dream, in his vision, and then woke up in the morning and then spent 4 years working out the mathematics of it.
That is amazing. Dawson, this has been amazing. Everybody who's watching and listening, if this interview with Dawson has been fantastic and you want to get even more content from Dawson, upgrade to the All Access Pass for the bonus interview, which we're going to be doing right after this. And I've got great questions there. And Dawson's obviously amazing, so you won't want to miss it. So be sure to upgrade to the All Access Pass for that. And then any final thoughts to share that we did not get a chance to cover, Dawson?
Lots, but we can't cover them all now. I would encourage you to just fill your life with everything that you can to support yourself. So it's meditation in the morning, again, first thing in the morning before you get involved in the outside local reality of your life. Tapping to bring you back to that baseline during the day only takes a minute or two to tap, and then you feel better right away. And then nurture yourself with great friendships, people who support and love you. Nurture yourself with great media. Just read books, read my books, read other people's books. There's so much information out there, some free information out there, or even the cost of a book, $10, $20. It's amazing how much you can get. And then you start to fill your mind and your reality with all of this. And when you fill your inner reality with such good inputs, the good outputs just appear all around you in friendships, in money insights, in well-being, in a massive epigenetic shift in your cells. So just doing all those things to truly love, nurture yourself, and create a good life for yourself. You can create a good life for yourself. Research shows that you can be dramatically happier than you are today. In some of these MRI studies, we see these monks and they close their eyes, meditate, and their waves, the brain waves of happiness, go up 700% over baseline. So the bottom line is you can be like 7 times as happy as you can even imagine. One neuroscientist doing the meditation said to me, Dawson, I thought I was a 10 out of 10 for happiness before, but now I'm like a 15. I'm having like transcendent happiness. And that is what anyone can learn to cultivate in their own brains.
It's amazing. Dawson, this has been amazing. And anybody can go to blissbrain.com and download that ebook for free, I believe, correct?
Yep.
Yep. So absolutely, everybody should go do that. No matter what. You've just reinforced as well in me that the choice is mine. Like, more happiness is there for me if I choose to go grab it. And that's outside of the shiny object. So thank you for that. And then there was another thought, but it's fleeting and gone. But thank you so much. I'm going to hit stop here, and then we'll come back in a minute for round 2. Thank you for spending time with me today. As someone who is committed to growth and service to this world, I so appreciate your willingness to come with me, go within, and serve our world through change. If you found value in this podcast and you know someone who can use this message, share this episode with them. Share it so our mission can be achieved one episode at a time. And of course, subscribe so you can hear more. And lastly, for more resources on what has helped me on my journey and can help you on yours, go to belove.media/resources. That's BELOVE.media/resources. Thank you again for listening.